96.3 FM, The Source.
Let's see, 6, 7, 8. Wow. Are we late, Jim? Wow. All right, 6 minutes after 9. I don't know. I can't see. I need new glasses, Robin. I need new glasses. There it is, 6 minutes. Jim George is here. He's the professor of the universe. I don't know if you know this or not. He's twin brothers in the studio, Lonnie, Ernest, and we're going to talk, I think, about, is it the 12-Step Ministries?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing? Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Lonnie.
Good morning.
Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
You do look like you've got some relatives in common.
We don't go there.
You don't go there? And who was the third guy you know? The
Jim Payton.
Jim Payton, yeah.
We're the three amigos.
I bumped into him one time in Publix, and I said, "Hey, Jim, I thought it was you."
Yeah.
And he's got the same name, so he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I look, I'm like, "Wait a minute, this isn't Jim."
Yeah.
But then I realized it was Jim. But
And we get it a lot too. People come up to me and say, Lonnie, that thing you said the other day was so good, and they're just talking, and I said, well, I'll tell Lonnie.
Jim's telling me something. I said, you need to shave, so they can tell the difference.
Yeah. That's good. Well, good to see you both. How's everything?
Good, thank you.
Anything in the world of technology that's interesting? It seems like it changes every day.
Changes every day. Well, this 5G thing that you were commenting on the other week about, may be detrimental to our health. I was reading an online article the other day, and it was disproving that and everything, but I haven't read the whole thing.
Oh, is that right?
Giving you all the information.
Well, see, and the question I had about that was based on the fact. Now, I don't know. I mean, you're eons above me with this subject. With any subject, really, but the guy we had on the air, just for everybody's sake, Lonnie, you probably didn't hear the interview. He basically wrote this really well-researched book and said 5G technology was going to cause all kinds of health problems. And my comment was, how come you're the only one saying it? And if you think if something was that, and I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying that was my question, and it sounds like Jim figured out that maybe we need to question it. So.
Well, apparently the article has gotten around to a point where a lot of the other PhDs and everybody are writing about it, saying it was well researched before they ever decided to launch it. Because, he was saying that birds get disorientated, all wildlife would be affected by it because of the frequency range. And so the first article I read was from a veterinarian, and he was saying that they test the hearing of dogs and cats and all these other things. Now, he didn't know about raccoons and deer, but he was thinking that they might be along the same, because they have super sensitive hearing.
Wow, imagine being able to hear a radio without the radio.
Isn't that something?
Just be able to hear it. Oh, there's Jim talking. So how are you, Lonnie?
I'm doing great, doing good.
You have been on here before, but it's been a long time, right?
Been a while, sure has.
And tell me about the 12-Step Ministry.
Well, the 12-Step Ministry, Christian 12-Step Ministry, we continue to work with alcoholic and drug addicts and any type of addiction, and we deal with a lot of guys and gals coming out of jail and prison. We go into the local jail. We go into the local prisons. We're in all 50 states, several foreign countries. We have our study guide in Spanish as well as English, and so we minister to approximately 2,000 students at any given time in our correspondence study
that
we
right?
do in the prisons.
What is your thinking on the reason for the opioid crisis? Or do people become addicted to opioids kind of innocently? You know what I mean? Like they go for a painkiller or something, and next thing you know, they're wanting it because it felt good or whatever. Is that part of it?
Well, we call it the 3 Ps. A lot of times people fail to realize if you have a headache in the morning, you take a Tylenol and aspirin because we don't like physical pain. But what do you do when you have emotional pain? And this is what's causing a lot of the drug addicts and alcoholism today, because people are trying to basically medicate emotional pain.
Really?
And then peer pressure. You've got a lot of peer pressure with kids in school, and then you got the fact that it's pleasurable. It feels good for the moment for many people. So we call it the 3 Ps.
I've never tried it. Is it really true? I mean, if I'm sad, I can take a pill and be happy?
I've never tried it myself. I've certainly dealt with a lot of people that have tried. Have tried it.
All right. So your approach to somebody who really is in trouble. There was I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut myself short there, but there was a story this morning about the children of those people.
Yes.
Who are being left not cared for with the same care that they really deserve. Like dad's a loser. Let's say, not to paint men as bad, but we can be, right?
Moms can too.
But anyway, so though they get involved with these drugs, and the kids are kind of left on their own, and that could lead to a whole slew of problems.
Well, we have a lot of babies born addicted to crack cocaine and opiates because of the mother continuing. In fact, we have I love to talk about Mike Beck, who pastors now the First United Methodist Church of Wildwood. Found him in jail, and he's been with us. I walked with him through his college, got a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then went on to Asbury and got a master's degree, and he's pastor now of the First United Methodist Church of Wildwood. But he was born addicted to crack cocaine. And the doctors gave worst case scenario that he might not hear, see, walk, talk. He's a genius. His IQ is out of sight.
I want to tell you about our friend Frank. Jim, do you know Frank?
Well,
Frank Tannehill?
Oh, the Frank the tree guy or another one?
Yes, the tree guy, Frank Tannehill. Yes. Well, he's written a book.
No.
And the book talks about how he was addicted to alcohol, and how going into jail. I mean, he has published the letters he wrote in jail, just ridiculing himself. In other words, he was the jail experience was making him realize, I got to do something, otherwise this is the rest of my life. I'm going to be in here. So, in order to counter the comment we had, Jim was pointing out that we had an interview with an author who was suggesting that prison time doesn't serve any good. And we counted it because I had a little experience for 7 years with the juvenile system, and it seemed like, okay, maybe not always, but there have been some success stories. And you're a better example. I mean, you see it all the time.
Well, certainly the vast majority don't benefit from prison, but basically there are some guys that reach the bottom and they realize prison is not where I want to spend the rest of my life, and they come to us broken, and we do what we can to assist them, and we have many successes right here in this community that we live in.
And that's the key. I mean, they come to you, because if you go out there and you solicit the people that are begging for money on the streets and stuff, they don't want that. They don't want help.
Oh, I have mamas and daddies and grandparents call me and say, would you help my son or my grandson? I said, well, why isn't he calling?
Yeah.
You see,
good point.
You can't help someone help themselves. They've got to reach that point where they're broken and they're ready to reach out, and those are the ones that we can help.
So when they hear that message, does it make them think I need to start wanting it myself?
Sure. And we have, like I said, a number of examples right here in the community where we've seen people. We have Logos Lodges begun now where they take addicts, men in a program. And Greg Crummiller, I mean, even this guy was, before the judge, they thought he had a rental on the county jail here, that he had a room for rent and kept it rented. But now he is directing a program where he has guys that come to him, and they bought the Bread of Life Church up on Anthony Road, and it's amazing what's happening there. The men coming there and receiving the help they need, but they come broken and requesting to go there, and then we can help them.
So take us there with you. Give us a little story. How does it work for you? Do you go to the prison and do a sermon? Do you sit with one-on-one? How do you do it?
We have open access to the local jail, fortunately. We go into the women's prison, which, by the way, is the largest women's prison in America.
Really?
Coleman is the largest federal prison in America. They're both right here in our front door and back door. And basically, we go in with the message of believing that Jesus Christ is a solution that he is a help for those that would like a relationship. Because basically, addiction, one of the root problems of addiction is abandonment, rejection. And abandonment and rejection causes bitterness and resentment. And that's what we deal with a lot of the people that we work with, is helping them come to deal with that emotional pain. And we consider the spiritual problem much so, and so we work with them on that basis. But they come to us because we've reached out to them in prisons and jails, and then they'll come when they get released. Some, like you said, they hear it, but when they get out of prison jail, they go their way, and they're not really ready. They're not broken.
Right.
Wow. So somebody, it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a way to be compassionate, and there's a way to maybe be empathetic and understand, okay, this person has done some stuff that we need to take seriously, but at the same time, there's an explanation. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe there is consequence to wrong decisions. We deal with that every day. But I believe there is redemption when someone who has suffered the consequences, and it continues to suffer the consequences of bad choices, there is redemption when that person reaches a point where they say, wait a minute, I got to do something. I can't continue in this lifestyle. I've got to make a change.
Have you ever worked with somebody that you just thought, there's no way this person's ever going to change, and then they did?
Oh, yes. We work. There's a guy right here in town, Joe Suggs. He's a great guy that was in prison for 15 years. And now he actually rented a flatbed trailer, went out to Reddick where he used to sell drugs and abuse drugs, and basically fed the people, gave out clothing and food, and apologized to the parents for selling drugs to their kids. And
oh, wow.
I mean, he's just amazing. He used to be Bubba Suggs, but he said, that's my drug name. I'm Joe Suggs now.
Do you know what I'm wondering? Like, if somebody, okay, I'm not trying to paint myself as a saint, but I've never done those things, okay? I've had my share of things, but I haven't done those things, okay? And so I don't know that I would be effective going with you, talking to them. Who knows, maybe. But I'm wondering if the person who can help you out is more like the person I just mentioned, Frank, somebody who's gone to hell and come back, and now there's a gentleman that comes on from Bob Wines. His name is Mr. George, and he was homeless. I don't know that he ever did any law violations, but he was homeless.
He tried to commit suicide.
He did, yeah. He tried to commit. So he understands that, and somebody who's in prison might relate more to somebody who's been in prison.
Certainly the people that facilitate our groups, the best facilitators are those who have been there. That can basically tell their story, but show their compassion and mercy by virtue of having been there. And that does make a difference. However, we do have people that are going into jails and prisons and facilitating groups locally in communities and churches here that have never been addicted to drugs and alcohol. But
that's effective?
Yes, they can become very effective because they basically they have a heart of compassion and concern and willing to reach out to people who they see that are hurting and wounded. Yeah.
Did you have a problem at one time, or did you recognize there was this need and you created this?
Mine was basically, I got a letter from a guy, I had retired in North Carolina, and I got a letter from a friend of mine and said, we need you back in Florida. And I'm an ordained Baptist minister, and I thought I had retired, but God said otherwise.
Is that how you know Jim, from North Carolina?
So we came back to Florida.
No?
And basically, I've been with Christian Trust now 15 years, and we've seen a lot of lives change. A lot of things happen there. Ray Geisel, who was a layman in the Blessed Trinity Catholic Church, wrote the study guide that we use. And he himself was a contractor in South Florida, and he got into some trouble with money, and his addiction was making money. Money was his God. And so he almost went to jail, and he was able to hire an attorney to get him out of the situation. And so he came here, and he felt compelled to go into the jail to help the guys, and he began to realize the common denominator. Most of the guys and gals in prison were there to support an addiction, alcohol and drugs. So he began to realize we need to help these guys. So he started writing lessons, and he'd go over to the church and memograph them off. And the lady said to Father Pat, said, we got to get him out of the office. He's taking up too much time. So Blessed Trinity actually published our first study guide. And Father Pat's still on our board of directors, but it was birthed out of a guy that his addiction was making money.
Talk about those lessons for a minute. So we have people in our Sunday school class who read the things. Explain that to us.
Yes, we have. When we send our study guide into the prisons, and we send them free, we don't charge anybody for the books. There's a lesson in there, an introductory lesson. They rip it out. They fill it out, send it in, and they're enrolled in our correspondence study. There's 28 lessons, and we will send them. When they send that in, we have people that peruse them, volunteers, because we, like on one Monday morning, we had 167 pieces of mail in one day.
Wow.
And these are all lessons coming back to us. So we have probably between 40 and 50 readers. They're all over the United States, not just here. But what we do when they send in a lesson, they're enrolled in our correspondence study. And we send those lessons to a reader who will read it. We attach the second lesson to follow up, and we send an envelope already stamped and addressed to the inmate. So the person that reads it in Cincinnati, Ohio, we have a lady that reads them there, Kay, who used to live here. And they will basically do the lesson, put it in an envelope, send it, and it goes back to the inmate. He does that lesson, sends it back to the office. We put it in the computer and send it back to Kay. When they finish the 28 lessons, we give them a nice certificate, and a lot of them like it. It goes into their jacket in the prison or wherever to show that they are trying to address their problem.
If I try to put myself in their shoes, and you told me that Jesus can help me, I might say, come on, I've heard this before. This is a man who lived 2,000 years ago. I don't see, maybe you can help me, but I don't know how this guy who lived 2,000 years ago can help me. What do you say to that person? How do you get them to understand that the Savior of the world is actually their Savior also? It's not just for everybody else.
Even though everybody is an addict, everybody, including the four of us sitting here, we're addicts.
I know.
We're addicted I'm addicted to the refrigerator.
Oh, me too.
Hershey bars.
So,
I'm there.
But anyway, we all
Can you help me with that, sir?
Well, we'll do our best. We'll give you a study guide.
Jesus was skinny. Buddha was fat. Buddha must have had a refrigerator problem.
But basically, we operate on the premise that any behavior or habit that interferes with a relationship with Jesus is a problem. So we basically work on sharing the story. We have scriptures in our study guide. We introduce them to Jesus, and we let them know right up front that we're Jesus-oriented. And if Jesus is a problem with you, then you need probably to find some other outlet to work on your wounded heart or your hurting heart or whatever. Because we're very, in fact, our study guide, the title is Walking the Trust as with Jesus Christ. So we're strictly oriented toward Jesus. And we're recognized in the drug courts here. I mean, they release inmates to us in the jail to take the faith-based programs because they know that we only deal with faith-based recovery programs.
Father O'Doherty does a show from Queen of Peace on this radio station in the morning, and I'm the person who actually pushes the button so it plays, so I'm here. And this past Sunday, he said something I wanted to interject into this, is that if you have Jesus in you, and you tell me so, that hey, I have Jesus in me. So if you don't see Jesus in the black and white words of the Bible, then maybe I see it in Lonnie Ernest. Maybe I see it in you. That's a pretty heavy burden or big responsibility to be that person. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, again, putting myself in the shoes of an inmate who doesn't have any idea about redemption. I think I would see it in you before I would see it in the black and white words of a paper book.
Well, I think you have a point there, and of course we have a lot of people that volunteer and work with us, but we have a guy, Ken, that came to us. He was raised in witchcraft. He didn't know anything about Jesus or the Bible, and
really,
and he was brought to my office homeless by the youth director of a local church, and he picked him up and was taking him to Salvation Army, and he looked across the street and saw our name, and he said, "Let's go in here." And so Ken sat there, and Ken Lundy, a lot of people know him. He was a drug dealer, and like I said, his family is still very involved in witchcraft. But we began to share with him, and he accepted Christ as his Savior. He went on to Dunklin to a faith-based program, was there for 12 months. He baptized his wife and 2 children in Lake Elijah at the camp in Okeechobee, and now he's a witness for Jesus. He's an ordained minister now, preaching the gospel. And here's a guy that was raised in witchcraft, but he came in, and I think by virtue of the name of our ministry and him coming in, we sat, we shared our testimony, that I think he felt the presence of Jesus right there.
How are you funded?
We're funded by people that love us and donate. We have no federal or state money. We have churches that support us. We have local businesses and individuals that donate to us. And we are strictly dependent on those donations, but every bill gets paid. God provides abundantly. We have a banquet once a year, and then we have a golf tournament once a year. And between the two, helps us a great deal. And a lot of the people who go to the banquet, of course, give money, but then they sign pledge cards and give through the year on a monthly or weekly basis or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the most other important things is that when you were talking about the gentleman who was into witchcraft and he was homeless, that means he didn't have a job and he wasn't self-sufficient, but you enabled him to get a job, a full-time job, and be self-sufficient.
He had actually taken the copper out of the air conditioner on his family's house to sell for drugs.
Oh.
So his family's sitting there in the heat of Florida.
Somebody did that to
air
me,
conditioning. Yeah.
by the way. I don't know what they used it for, but I went out back one day cutting my grass during the winter, and I said, that doesn't look the same.
They probably sold it for drugs. That's what happens.
So
but,
when it says 12 steps, can you name the steps, or are they?
yeah, we basically use the same steps as AA. But when we come, like the first step is my life's unmanageable, out of control. The second step is there is a higher power, and we name him as Jesus. We name the higher power. And then the third step is we surrender to him. We don't commit to him, we surrender. The white flag, we give up everything to follow him and to follow the direction that he gives us through the Bible to make our lives how God would have us to live. And that's the way we do it. And then, of course, you go all the way through the steps of the end, all 12 steps. And we take these into the community. Like I lead a group myself personally at the First Baptist Church of Bellevue every Tuesday night at 6:30. And I'll have anywhere from 8 to 15 people in the group there. And we take it step by step. Right now we're working on the 4th step, which is you do your searching moral inventory of actually looking into your life and finding out maybe some of the traumas or some of the things that has impacted our lives to cause us to make poor choices.
Lonnie, we have like a minute left. Can you talk to the people who might want to get in touch with you and give them the information they need?
Yes, please call us at 352-732-0877. You can also go to our webpage on the internet, www.christian12step.org. And our webpage gives you all kind of information. There's a place where you can check for groups, and every group in this area is listed. But you go to the state, people in Ohio can punch on Ohio and find the meetings in that state. So we have the help right there on our webpage.
I love this conversation. Thank you, Jim, for inviting Lonnie. I just love the work that you do and people who are doing the same thing as you. We've had others in here. Madeline.
Madeline.
Do you know Madeline, by the way? I can't remember her last name now. She's a pretty lady. She also does churches. I mean prisons. She's a friend of Manal Fakori. Do you guys know her?
But I don't know her, no.
Anyway, so I love what you do, and I'm always amazed that there are people who resist the message of Jesus. It just doesn't make sense. It's such a great, beautiful, loving message. Even if you don't want to consider him a deity, at least get started with the philosophy of Jesus. Yeah. Lonnie, thank you for what you're doing with your life. You're awesome.
Well, thank you for allowing us to be here and sharing our story.
Thank Jim. He invited you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate you,
All right,
Jim.
well, thank you. Yeah, sometimes the question is, can anything good come out of anything bad? And the answer is yes. Sometimes you have to have something affect you so you can affect your life.
Thank you, Jim. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. We've just gotten the March jobs numbers. Employers added 103,000 jobs in the U.S. That is below expectations. Those were for 170,000. The unemployment rate holding steady at 4.1%. We're getting pushback